Hi poets, welcome to week 2. This week we will be talking about sound in our work and sound in the work of others. And if it's possible to just listen when you read a poem. One of my favorite and most useful guides in the world of poetry is the phenomenal poet Jorie Graham. And many years ago, I think maybe in the 1980s, she wrote of poetry, lyric poetry, the sound must seem an echo to the sense in a poem. What that means to me is that in terms of whatever meaning a poem tries to make, whatever story it attempts to convey, the sound of that poem is necessarily inclined towards mirroring or enhancing that content. As you saw in the readings for this week and the instructions, we are doing a lot of work thinking about the distinction between form and content, if they are separable or not. And I would say that as you go about reading this week, regardless of what the exercises ask you to do, think really hard about that voice inside of your head that is the only thing you listen to when you're silently reading. Is that voice you? Does it sound like you? Does it sound like the writer? How might you know what the writer sounds like? It's just that voice in your head. I think that is a really, really useful way to either one, prove to yourself that listening hard helps us identify others and the in-betweens of others. And so perhaps when you read a poem in your head, when you read it silently, you hear it in your own voice, or you hear it in what you might imagine to be the author's voice, or maybe you just hear it in a voice. Who could that voice be? What voice is that? Is it perhaps Merrill's version, James Merrill's version of the spirit, the contacted spirit through the lens of art? That sort of fusion between engaging with the art and engaging with the self. There's many voices to listen to. And beyond our experience of reading a poem in a voice, thinking about the technical structures of sound that are enchanting us and bewitching us as we move through a poem, that some of which are quite obvious. Perhaps you're thinking of a sonnet where there's strict end rhyme, you know exactly where the sound sort of distinguishing factor is going to appear. But there's so many other ways to engage with sound in a poem, whether that be through tone or visual cues of sound, like all capitals or italics. It could be syntax. It could be really, really long lines are still engaging with a kind of overwhelm of sound. Repetition has an echo effect. That's a sonic effect. It's impossible, even as we speak, to separate what we say from the sound it makes. And that's really beautiful. So as a poet, you will want to use that to your benefit. Even if your poems aren't strikingly sonic, even if they're minimal, even if they're bare bones, thinking about what the sonic effect you hope to achieve is. Perhaps if you are one of those more minimalist poets, you're attempting to achieve a sense in your reader of spaciousness, openness. Perhaps it is a sort of concentrated version of sound and space in the language, and then sort of the world around it is blank. It's really silent. If you're a maximalist poet, if you're writing sort of these really long, luscious, imagistic poems, maybe you are hoping to make your reader feel as though they are listening to a symphony or at an orchestra or in a big crowd where there are many, many people yelling and talking and all different kinds of sounds are happening at once. And so if you engage on either end of the spectrum, it might feel clear what you intend. And as we move forward, identifying what our hopes are, what our poetic tendencies are, what our aspirations are, the kinds of poems we want to write. We're here to develop the skills that allow us to move that beautiful, gorgeous, complex poem in our head onto the page through developing our senses of witness, perception. Sometimes when we become deft listeners of the outside world, of ourselves, of other poets, we find that without doing any other work, really, our attention to sound on the page expands, grows, blossoms. And so in this class that encourages you to think about the poem as existing everywhere around you, including within yourself, I would love for you this week, as kind of a bonus exercise, to eavesdrop, listen in on a conversation somewhere in public that you're not a part of. And you can listen to the content, whatever they're saying, but pay attention to the really, really crucial sound components as well. Pay attention to the volume at which they speak. Are they speaking quietly? Are they speaking very loudly? How rapidly are they speaking? Are they trying to convey information very quickly? Are they excited? Is it more slow and sort of drawn out, pensive, elaborative? And then think about things like sort of extreme sort of fluctuations in sound, and how that correlates with emotion or context or place, setting, things like that. Being a listener of the world as well as a seer is the first step and second step to developing the really, really unique qualities of your own writing style, your own poetic voice. I'll leave you with that. I'm looking forward to reading your work yet again. And if you have any questions, please send an email my way. Bye.